Los Angeles is known for being a city of opportunity and dreams, but what you probably don't know about LA is its unspoken history of mass incarceration. It all started way back in 1771 with the Spanish invasion. The Tongva people lived in peace for 7,000 years, with a huge population boost thanks to acorns and extensive cultural growth. Uh-oh, here come the Spanish. They proceeded to conquer and ravage their natives' lands, even stealing their women and children. You may ask, how does mass incarceration start here? Mass incarceration is actually a product of what's called settler colonialism, which is what happened between the Spanish and the Tongva natives. That's when settlers want to take land, not to gain any resources, but simply to build a new permanent racially exclusive society that only belongs to them. This is an extremely important concept to keep in mind because it shows up time and time again throughout the history of mass incarceration.
Black people had a long way to go before society let them be free. In just the next decade, the government established the vagrancy laws. Any person who was unemployed, even if they had just left a job to find a new one, was considered a vagrant and labeled as a criminal. The government said you either work hard or you get jailed, and so lots of people went to jail. Once jailed, they would be forced to pay a fine to leave, but many were too poor to do so. Whites would then pay the fine for them in exchange for forced labor, which is essentially slavery all over again. Even if they wanted to change how society was by appealing to the government, African Americans were not able to because of restrictions to their right to vote. Things like difficult literacy tests, the grandfather clause in which you could only vote if your grandfather could vote, or poll taxes not letting poor people vote kept black people from being able to take political action to change their way of life.
These restrictions and racial actions were not just targeted against African Americans, but also the Chinese and Mexicans. Immigration detention is a form of incarceration that became popular during the late 19th century and early 20th century. During this time, the Chinese Exclusion Acts and the National Origins Acts were in place to extremely limit the number of Mexicans and Chinese that entered the country and make it very difficult for them to stay in the country as well. Furthermore, in 1896, the Wong Wing Supreme Court's case established that it was legal to deport someone without a jury trial. Even worse, rather than simply deporting those who were coming into the country illegally, they were mass jailing them and mandating them to participate in forced labor while imprisoned. Also in 1896, the Supreme Court upheld in Plessy v. Ferguson that separate meant equal, and mandated that African Americans were restricted to separate facilities than whites, excluding them from rightfully earned basic privileges similar to vagrancy laws. We can tie these actions to settler colonialism once again. The settlers gained all this land across the United States and had no intention of sharing it with anyone else to establish their own racially exclusive society.
1927, a year of tragedy. A policeman shot Sam Faulkner, a young, innocent African-American child, which caused the entire community in LA to become really angry with the police. Although there was clear evidence that unjust police brutality occurred, the court sided with the white policeman, which set off the African-American community even more. As the years went by, tensions within the black community increased so high that in 1965, open retaliation took form with the Watts Rebellion. Black folk gathered in mobs, tearing down sidewalks and hurling bricks at police vehicles as the government deployed 16,000 personnel to essentially arrest everyone on site that showed the slightest bit of aggravation. In 1985, the LAPD experimented a new weapon that tore a hole into a house in Tacoma, just to find women and children eating ice cream. This was during the crack epidemic, which divided the African American communities. Middle class saw crack as a threat, but the less fortunate neighborhoods faced over-policing. Over-policing was an issue that not only faced adults, but also children who were still in schools. Among the kids that were incarcerated in schools, there were disproportionate amounts of blacks targeted by the school police departments, and they were being charged for the slightest of misdemeanors as part of their zero-tolerance policy. In a case involving two teenage kids, officers openly fired in an alleyway, suspecting the kids of setting up an ambush. In reality, the kids were only using BB guns to shoot at kittens, but after they were arrested, they were portrayed as the wrongdoers, and both kids exhibited remorse for engaging in such a normal teenage activity. Recently, issues have arisen over the transparency and transparency of the LAPD through the availability of police body cam footage as a way to discern the real actions taken by police officers in controversial cases. Organizations such as the $1 Million Hoods are fighting to use statistics on numbers of arrests to combat the unfair treatment of black people in LA.